The lukewarm coffee tasted like regret in Tuesday mornings. Brandon slurped it anyway, the fluorescent lights of Efficient Solutions Inc. humming a dirge above his cubicle. Another spreadsheet, another soul-crushing day. His bank account balance, recently checked, was a 3-digit number that mocked his master's degree, in communications, a degree that had communicated precisely nothing of value to potential employers. Apparently, beyond his ability to acquire student loan debt. He scrolled through Instagram, a parade of sun-drenched vacations, gleaming cars, and meals that cost more than his weekly grocery budget. Must be nice, he muttered, double-tapping a picture of an influencer posing with a canary yellow Lamborghini in front of a Monte Carlo casino. If only, just for a day, to feel what that was like. To not have to choose between name-brand pasta and paying the electric bill on time. A strange tingling sensation started at the base of his skull, like his brain was fizzing. He blinked. The spreadsheet on his screen seemed to wobble, probably just the cheap coffee and lack of sleep. He shook his head, trying to focus. The tingling intensified, then coalesced into not a voice, not words, but an understanding, an imperative that bloomed in his mind with the clarity of a divine revelation. If divine revelations were about high finance and profligate spending, live lavishly, be rewarded, hesitate, and lose. Brandon physically recoiled, almost tipping over his swivel chair. "What the hell?" he whispered, glancing around. His colleagues, Stan from accounting and Brenda from HR, were engrossed in their own digital purgatories. No one seemed to have noticed his near defenestration. He touched his temples. Was he having a stroke? A stress-induced hallucination? Test it. The impression urged. Start small, but not too small. His lunch break was in 10 minutes. Usually it was a sad desk salad or a $2 hot dog from the cart downstairs. Today, the usual greasy spoon on the corner, Jim's Diner, suddenly seemed unappealing. But that new place, Artisan Bistro, 2 blocks over, the one with the crisp white tablecloths and the menu in French he couldn't pronounce. The urge was strong. Go there. Order something impressive. This was insane. He was cracking up, but what if? The thought, absurd as it was, lodged in his brain. He checked his wallet. $47 and change. Lunch at Lartisan could easily wipe that out. When the clock hit noon, Brandon found himself walking, almost in a daze, towards Lartisan. The hostess, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from polished ivory, gave him a once-over that clearly catalogued his frayed cuffs and discount store shoes. He almost turned around. Don't you dare. The mental nudge was sharp, almost painful. He straightened his tie. Table for one, please? Seated by the window, he scanned the menu. Cock, au vin, $38. Steak frites, $45. Pan-seared scallops with truffle risotto, $52. His eyes watered. This was rent money, the scallops. The directive was clear, accompanied by a phantom taste of buttery, earthy truffle that made his stomach rumble. I'll have the pan-seared scallops, he told the waiter, trying to sound like he ordered $50 lunches every day, and a glass of your best Chardonnay. What was he doing? The wine arrived, golden and crisp. He took a sip. It was admittedly the best wine he'd ever tasted. The scallops followed, perfectly seared, nestled on a bed of creamy risotto that smelled like heaven. He ate slowly, savoring every ridiculously expensive bite. This was how the other half lived. Or, well, the other 0.1%. The bill came, $78.5 with tax and a begrudgingly added 20% tip, because he felt the system would frown on cheapness. He paid with his debit card, wincing internally as his meager balance took a fatal blow. He'd be eating ramen for the next 2 weeks. As he walked out of the bistro, blinking in the sunlight, his phone buzzed. A notification from his banking app. Direct deposit received, plus $1,000. Source, Benefactor Solutions, LLC. Brandon stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk, causing a power walker to swerve violently. $1,000? He mouthed. He checked again. It was real. His balance was now a healthy 4-digit number. The mental fizzing returned, softer this time, almost approving. Good. See? Simple. $1,000. For a fancy lunch. He'd essentially been paid over $900 to eat scallops. His mind reeled. Benefactor Solutions, LLC. He'd never heard of them. This couldn't be real. A bank error. A scam he'd somehow pre-qualified for. But the feeling, that strange, insistent presence in his mind, was undeniable. It felt satisfied. The rest of the afternoon at Efficient Solutions, Inc. was a blur. Spreadsheets swam before his eyes, but all he could think about was the $1,000 and the scallops. Was this a one-time fluke? Or was this his new life? The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. Don't go back to the old ways. The warning was subtle but firm as he packed up his sad little briefcase. Your car, for instance. It's an embarrassment. His car was a 15-year-old Toyota Camry, affectionately nicknamed. It had mismatched hubcaps and a persistent smell of old socks. An embarrassment. Well, yeah, objectively. He drove home, the Weezer coughing and sputtering in protest. The system's disapproval was like a faint headache. That evening, instead of his usual microwave dinner, he found himself scrolling through luxury car rental websites. A Porsche 911 for a day, $800. A Ferrari 488, $1,500. A Lamborghini Huracan, $2,000. The Lamborghini. The mental image was vivid. Him, sunglasses on, cruising down Sunset Boulevard, engine roaring. "You are insane," he told the empty room, but the thought of that power, that thrill, and the potential reward. He booked the Huracan for the next day, Saturday. $2,000. His entire new windfall halved, just like that. He felt sick. The next morning, a sleek, angular, lime green Lamborghini Huracan was delivered to his dingy apartment complex. The delivery guy, all sunglasses and bored cool, handed him the keys with a smirk that said, "You'll crash this." Kids from the neighborhood gathered, eyes wide. His landlord, Mr. Henderson, peered out from his window, jaw slack. Brandon slid into the low-slung driver's seat. The leather smelled like money. He fumbled for the ignition, a red fighter jet-style flip-up switch. He pressed it. The Vatsero engine behind his head roared to life, a monstrous, beautiful sound that vibrated through his bones. He drove, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. The car was a beast, an extension of his will. Heads turned, phones came out, people pointed. He drove through Beverly Hills, past Rodeo Drive, windows down, the California sun on his face. He felt like a king. He bought a $200 pair of sunglasses because the system seemed to suggest his current ones were insufficiently opulent. He had an espresso at a fancy café. The Lamborghini parked brazenly out front, drawing a crowd. The rental was for 24 hours. He returned it late that afternoon, heart still pounding, a goofy grin plastered on his face. The $2,000 charge hit his account. Ouch. His phone buzzed. Banking app. Direct deposit received, plus $50,000. Source: Benefactor Solutions, LLC. Brandon choked on his own spit. $50,000. He sank onto his worn-out couch, the springs groaning in protest. This was real. This was happening. The system wasn't just a voice in his head. It was a golden ticket, a demanding, terrifying, exhilarating golden ticket. Good flex. The system seemed to purr. But a rental? We can do better. Over the next week, Brandon's life transformed, guided by the insistent, non-verbal cues from the Lifa-style system. As he'd started calling it in his head, he began to spend, and spend, and spend. First, the apartment. His cramped one-bedroom was clearly a source of systemic displeasure. He found himself drawn to a brand-new luxury high-rise downtown, the kind with a rooftop pool, a 24-hour concierge, and valet parking. A 2-bedroom penthouse suite, all glass walls and panoramic city views, was available. Monthly rent, $15,000. He signed the lease, his hand shaking slightly. The system hummed with approval. A deposit of $100,000 appeared in his account just before he swiped his new Benefactor Solutions funded debit card. Apparently, his credit score was now irrelevant. Then transportation. The Weezer had to go. He found himself at a high-end dealership surrounded by gleaming metal and the intoxicating scent of new leather. A Ferrari dealership. He'd always dreamed of a Ferrari. A cherry-red Ferrari Portofino winked at him from the showroom floor. Price tag $280,000. "I'll take it," he said, the words feeling foreign and powerful. The salesman, who'd initially looked at Brandon's casual attire with suspicion, suddenly became his best friend. The paperwork was a blur. As he was about to sign the final check, a wave of anxiety hit him. This was too much, too fast. "Don't be a peasant, Brandon," the system chided, a cold wave washing over him. He glanced at his phone. His bank balance, which had been comfortably over $120,000 a moment ago, flickered. $5,000. $10,000. It was dropping. Fast. "Is everything all right, sir?" the salesman asked, noticing his pallor. The punishment. It was real. He was hesitating. "Fine. Just..." Brandon scribbled his signature. The mental pressure eased. His bank balance stabilized. Then, a moment later, direct deposit received, plus $500,000. Source: Benefactor Solutions, LLC. He now owned a Ferrari, and was significantly richer. His wardrobe was next. The system seemed to have a particular disdain for his collection of graphic tees and ill-fitting jeans. Guided by an invisible hand, he found himself on Rodeo Drive. Brioni, Armani, Gucci, Tom Ford. He bought suits that cost more than his old car, shoes handcrafted in Italy, watches with more complications than his previous life. Each purchase was met with a pleasant mental hum and a corresponding, often disproportionately large, deposit into his account. He learned that bespoke was a very good word, and that a $5,000 price tag for a cashmere sweater wasn't a typo. He dined at Michelin-starred restaurants nightly, Emsalis, Providence, and Sataka. He learned the difference between Acetra and Beluga caviar. He developed a taste for vintage Bordeaux. The checks were astronomical, the rewards even more so. His old life, the life of spreadsheets and lukewarm coffee, felt like a distant dream, or perhaps a nightmare he'd finally woken up from. Stan from accounting and Brenda from HR would never recognize him. He'd quit Efficient Solutions, Inc. via a very expensive gift basket sent to his bewildered former boss, containing a Rolex and a note saying, "My sincerest apologies, but my lifestyle has become incompatible with spreadsheets." The system had particularly approved of that expensive flourish. His social life also underwent a seismic shift. Money, it turned out, was a powerful aphrodisiac and an even more powerful social lubricant. Invitations to exclusive parties, gallery openings, and charity galas started appearing, as if by magic, on the marble countertop of his new penthouse. At one such party, a glittering affair in a Bel Air mansion, he met Tiffany. Tiffany was a model, impossibly tall, blonde, with eyes the color of the Caribbean Sea. She laughed at his slightly awkward jokes, seemed genuinely interested in his heavily edited and system-approved backstory of sudden tech success, and didn't bat an eye when he ordered a $10,000 bottle of champagne. The system practically sang with joy. Dating someone like Tiffany was apparently peak lavish lifestyle. "So, Brandon," Tiffany said, her voice a sultry purr as they stood on a balcony, overlooking the twinkling lights of Los Angeles. "What do you do right now?" Brandon grinned, feeling the buzz of the expensive champagne and the even more potent buzz of the system's approval. "I am enjoying the view with a beautiful woman. Tomorrow, maybe I'll buy a yacht. The Pacific is looking a little empty." Tiffany's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "A yacht? Just like that? Why not?" Brandon shrugged, a newfound confidence flowing through him. Life's too short for small boats. The system flooded his mind with warmth. Deposit plus $2 million. Apparently, talking about buying a yacht was a flex in itself. Actually, buying one would probably net him a small island. Living this life was like walking a tightrope. The rewards were incredible beyond his wildest dreams, but the pressure was constant. The system was always there, a silent partner, an invisible puppet master. If he tried to order a regular coffee instead of a $15 single origin pour-over, a headache would start. If he thought about taking the bus just for kicks, a wave of nausea would hit him. If he considered wearing an old, comfortable t-shirt around his penthouse, he'd feel a cold dread, and the lights in his apartment might flicker ominously, until he changed into something designer. One afternoon, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the constant need to perform, he idly browsed a budget travel website, looking at pictures of quiet cabins in the woods. No Michelin stars, no valet parking, just peace. A sharp pain lanced through his temples, and his Ferrari keys, sitting on the $20,000 Calacatta marble coffee table, vibrated violently, and then flew across the room, smashing a $15,000 Lake crystal vase. Message received. No rustic cabins. No peace and quiet unless it was on a private island with a full staff. Okay, I get it. He yelled at the empty room, or rather at the omnipresent system. Luxury cruise it is. Maybe a world tour? First class, of course. The headache receded. The shattered crystal remained. He'd have to buy a new, even more expensive vase. The system would probably like that. He sighed. This was his life now. A gilded cage, albeit one with incredible room service. He called his new personal assistant, a hyper-efficient young woman named Chloe, whom the system had practically headhunted for him after he complained about having to make his own dinner reservations. "Chloe, find me the most opulent suite on the largest, most luxurious cruise ship currently sailing, and book it for a month. No, make it 2. Right away, Mr. Brandon," Chloe's voice chirped from the phone. "Will you be requiring a private jet to reach the port? Is there any other way to travel?" Brandon asked, already feeling the system's approval warming him. The rewards were becoming almost ludicrous. A new Patek Philippe watch casually purchased while waiting for Tiffany to finish a photo shoot resulted in enough money to buy a controlling interest in a small tech startup. He did. The system seemed to like power moves. He started throwing lavish parties at his penthouse. DJs, celebrity chefs, open bars stocked with unobtainable liquors. The guest lists were a who's who of Lala's young, rich, and beautiful. Tiffany was always by his side, a perfect accessory, though he was starting to suspect her interest in him was directly proportional to his Amex Black Card's limit. Not that the system cared. It approved, vociferously. His old friends, well, that was complicated. He tried to reconnect with his best friend from college, Dave. Dave was an accountant married, with a kid on the way, living a quiet suburban life. Brandon had invited him and his wife, Sarah, to dinner at Spago. The dinner was an exercise in awkwardness. Dave and Sarah, dressed in their Sunday best, looked shell-shocked by the prices on the menu. Brandon, trying to put them at ease, ordered for the table, picking the most expensive items, as the system subtly urged. "So," Dave said, staring at a tiny, artfully arranged piece of foie gras, "this is your life now, huh? Ferraris and this. It's been an adjustment," Brandon admitted. "Must be tough," Sarah said, a slight edge to her voice. Brandon felt a pang of something. Guilt? Nostalgia? The system immediately sent a throb of discomfort through his head. No dwelling on the past. Only forward. Only more. He tried to shower them with gifts. A top-of-the-line stroller for the baby. A down payment on a bigger house. Dave politely refused. "We're fine, Brandon," he said, a wall between them that hadn't been there before. "This is all a bit much for us. After they left, Brandon felt a strange emptiness. The system, however, was pleased with the expensive dinner and the attempted though rejected lavish gifts. Another 7-figure deposit hit his account. He was richer than ever, and perhaps a little more alone. But there was no time for melancholy. The system demanded constant motion, constant consumption. He bought a Bugatti Chiron, just because he saw one and thought it looked neat. Cost? $3 million. Reward? $15 million and a portfolio of blue-chip stocks. He bought a vacation home in Aspen, then one in St. Bart's. He flew to Paris for lunch, Milan for a fitting, Tokyo for dinner. He started to get a reputation. Brandon Cash King, one tabloid called him. The mystery millionaire making Hollywood look poor. He was a walking, talking embodiment of conspicuous consumption. And he was, for the most part, having an absolute blast, even if it was exhausting. One day, the system gave him a new kind of nudge. It wasn't about buying something. It was about creating something. Or rather, investing in something creative. A struggling independent film, a young fashion designer, an avant-garde art installation. The system seemed to want him to become a patron of the arts, but in the most ostentatious way possible. He funded a ridiculously over-the-top sci-fi movie with a list actors and more CGI than sense. It was projected to be a colossal flop, but the system loved the sheer audacity of the budget. He backed a fashion designer whose entire collection was made from ethically sourced gold thread and meteorite fragments. The clothes were unwearable but made a huge splash at Fashion Week. Rewards poured in. He was on a private jet, somewhere over the Atlantic, en route to Monaco for the Grand Prix. Tiffany was asleep in one of the jet's private bedrooms. Brandon was sipping a 50-year-old Macallan and idly browsing a newsfeed on his diamond-encrusted tablet. Yes, the system had insisted on the diamonds. A headline caught his eye. The article featured an interview with Stern, an old money tech mogul known for his understated, though still immense wealth and philanthropic efforts. Stern was decrying the vulgar displays of wealth by certain newcomers, calling them empty, soulless, and ultimately damaging to the fabric of society. Brandon felt a prickle of annoyance. Was Stern talking about him? Probably. He challenges the lifestyle, the system communicated, not with words, but with a wave of cold fury that was truly alarming. He implies frugality is a virtue. This cannot stand. For the first time, the system felt aggressive. Not just demanding, but actively hostile towards an outside party. Show him, the system urged. Show them all. Outshine him. Outspend him. Outlive him. This was new. A direct confrontation. The system usually just wanted him to buy things and enjoy them. Now, it wanted him to engage in competitive lavishness. The Monaco Grand Prix was the epitome of wealth and excess. Yachts the size of destroyers filled the harbor. Champagne flowed like water. Celebrities and billionaires mingled. Maxwell Stern was, of course, present, holding court on his massive, yet tastefully minimalist, superyacht, the Albatross. Brandon, guided by a particularly strong series of systemic nudges, had chartered an even larger, even more opulent yacht. The Poseidon's Folly, complete with a gold-plated helicopter, a submarine, and an onboard nightclub that was currently thumping with the beats of a world-famous DJ. He'd flown in from Ibiza. He made sure the Poseidon's Folly was moored directly opposite the Albatross, dwarfing it slightly. Petty? Absolutely. System approved? Enthusiastically. He threw the most extravagant party Monaco had ever seen. Fireworks that spelled out, BK was, here in diamonds, or at least very bright lights that looked like diamonds. A guest list that was a who's who of global glitterati, and a catering spread flown in from 6 different Michelin 3-star restaurants. Maxwell Stern, Brandon noticed, kept glancing over from his more sedate gathering, a muscle twitching in his jaw. During a lull in the party, Brandon, feeling bold, and system goaded, took a diamond-encrusted megaphone, another recent, absurd acquisition, and addressed the harbor. Mr. Stern, enjoying the view, I find your yacht charmingly quaint, perhaps a little understated for Monaco, wouldn't you say? A hush fell over both parties. Stern, a man used to universal deference, slowly turned. His face was like thunder. Some of us, Stern called back, his voice amplified by his own, no doubt discreetly powerful sound system, prefer substance over spectacle, mister. Whoever you are. Brandon King, Brandon announced cheerfully, and I believe spectacle is substance when done correctly. For instance, he snapped his fingers. On cue, a squadron of synchronized drones, each carrying a Jeroboam of crystal champagne, flew from his yacht towards Stern's, delivering them with surprising precision to Stern's astonished guests. A little something to liven up your book club meeting. The system was ecstatic. A rush of euphoria, stronger than any champagne, flooded Brandon, along with a notification on his private banking app that made his eyes bulge. Plus $50 million. He'd also apparently unlocked a new system tier, global influencer of extravagance. Whatever that meant, probably more spending. Stern did not look amused. He looked apoplectic. Several of his guests, however, were now surreptitiously sipping the crystal and looking towards Brandon's yacht with newfound interest. The next day, news of the Battle of the Billionaire Base Drops, as one witty blogger termed, it was everywhere. Stern released a sanctimonious statement about the decline of decorum. Brandon, prompted by the system, responded by buying a small picturesque Mediterranean island and announcing plans to host an annual festival of fabulousness there. Price tag, $75 million. Reward, $250 million, and deeds to several prime commercial properties in London and New York. This rivalry, it seemed, was incredibly profitable. The system, however, wasn't just about mindless spending. It began to push Brandon towards more sophisticated forms of flexing. He acquired a controlling stake in a legendary but struggling Formula One team, vowing to return them to glory with an unlimited budget. He bought a forgotten Da Vinci sketch at a private auction, outbidding museums and serious collectors, simply because the system liked its historical significance. He then loaned it to the Louvre, but insisted on a solid gold plaque next to it reading, "Generously loaned by Brandon King." The system ate it up. Tiffany, meanwhile, was becoming a slight issue. She was undeniably beautiful and a great companion for public appearances, but her conversations were increasingly limited to shopping gossip and her next Instagram post. The system, which had initially adored her, was starting to emit faint signals of boredom. A lifestyle partner should be stimulating, it seemed to suggest one evening as Tiffany detailed her exhaustive search for the perfect shade of pink handbag for nearly an hour. Intellectually, culturally, not just aesthetically pleasing. This was a surprise. The system had taste, and it was evolving. He met Isabella at a charity gala he'd reluctantly sponsored. The system insisted on philanthropic displays, as long as they were extravagantly publicized. Isabella wasn't a model. She was an astrophysicist with a PhD from MIT, working on a project to detect habitable exoplanets. She was witty, brilliant, and completely unimpressed by his Bugatti when he offered her a ride home. "It's a beautiful piece of engineering," she'd said, "but utterly impractical. My Prius gets much better mileage and can actually navigate Boston traffic." Brandon was charmed, and to his shock, the system gave a little hum of interest. Intriguing, unconventional, a challenge to impress. Dating Isabella was a whole new level of flexing. She wasn't swayed by lavish gifts in the same way Tiffany had been. Flowers? They're lovely, but they die. Donate the money to a STEM program for girls instead. A diamond necklace? It's gorgeous, Brandon, but I'd be terrified of losing it in the lab. How about we fund a new telescope array? So, Brandon started funding telescope arrays. He endowed scholarships. He built a state-of-the-art research wing for her university, complete with a planetarium that had diamond dust paint on the dome ceiling to simulate a truly infinite number of stars. The system's slightly absurd touch. Isabella was gobsmacked and genuinely touched. And the system. It purred. Apparently, intellectual philanthropy was a very high-tier flex. The rewards were correspondingly massive, not just in money, but in system influence points, which seemed to unlock more subtle and powerful ways for Brandon to interact with the world of high finance and luxury. He could now, for example, suggest market trends that would then mysteriously come to pass. His life became a bizarre, but thrilling blend of insane opulence and genuine, if ostentatiously funded, good deeds. He'd fly Isabella to remote, dark sky locations in his private jet to observe celestial phenomena, then host a champagne breakfast for local astronomers. He bought a floundering scientific journal and turned it into the most prestigious, highest-impact publication in its field, with incredible print quality and a launch party that rivaled a Hollywood premiere. Maxwell Stern continued to be a thorn in his side, or rather a convenient foil. Stern announced a major donation to environmental causes. Brandon, prompted by the system and a desire to one-up Stern, bought a vast tract of endangered rainforest and turned it into a heavily guarded, ultra-luxurious eco-reserve, accessible only by invitation, with personal chefs and spa treatments for the conservation scientists working there. "Saving the planet, one 5-star biome at a time," he quipped to a reporter. The system practically exploded with approval. He was learning the nuances of his gilded cage. It wasn't just about spending. It was about impactful spending, about making waves, about being unforgettable. One morning, he woke up in his penthouse, the one in New York this time, overlooking Central Park, and felt different. The usual hum of the system was there, but it was quieter, almost expectant. A new threshold, it communicated. True legacy. What did that mean? He'd bought everything a man could want. Cars, houses, jets, yachts, islands, even a friendly F1 team. He was dating a brilliant, beautiful woman who challenged him. He was a patron of arts and sciences. What was left? He wandered out to his balcony, the New York skyline sprawling before him. The system felt poised. Then, an idea, so audacious, so colossal, it made buying a Bugatti feel like picking up a candy bar. It wasn't a system suggestion, not directly, but it felt like the logical, insane culmination of everything he'd been doing. He called Chloe. "Chloe, I have a new project. A big one. I want to build the most luxurious, most technologically advanced, most exclusive residential tower the world has ever seen. Right here, in New York." Chloe, ever unflappable, paused for only a second. A skyscraper, Mr. King. Do you have a specific location in mind? I want it to be the location, Brandon said, a wild grin spreading across his face. Taller than anything else, more amenities than a small country. Residences that make Buckingham Palace look like a fixer-upper. We'll call it. The system surged, a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated approval. This wasn't just flexing, this was monument building. This was etching his name onto the sky. Project Apex initiated, funding unlocked, unlimited. This time, the system actually used a word clear in his mind. Unlimited. The rewards for even conceiving of the Apex were staggering, enough to make his previous windfalls look like pocket change. He now had access to lines of credit that could bail out small nations. Building the Apex became his obsession. He hired star architects, legendary engineers, avant-garde designers. He bought out entire city blocks, navigating New York's notoriously complex zoning laws with a combination of charm, ruthless efficiency, and the kind of financial firepower that made mayors weep with gratitude. Maxwell Stern, upon hearing of the Apex, publicly dismissed it as a monument to ego, destined for failure. Brandon responded by announcing that the penthouse of the Apex, a triplex occupying the top 3 floors with its own private infinity pool, cantilevered out over the city, would be priced at $250 million, making it the most expensive apartment in the world. And he would live there. The system loved it. He doubts. Prove him wrong. Build higher. Shine brighter. The construction of the Apex was a global spectacle. It rose story by story, a gleaming needle of glass and steel, promising unheard-of luxuries, personal helipads for every resident, an indoor ski slope, a zero-gravity spa, apartments with customizable holographic environments. Isabella, initially skeptical of such blatant extravagance, became fascinated by the engineering challenges. Brandon, at her suggestion, incorporated cutting-edge sustainable technologies into the design, making the Apex not just the most luxurious tower, but also surprisingly green a flex within a flex that the system highly approved of. He still had to maintain his day-to-day flexing, of course. The system didn't tolerate complacency. He bought a vineyard in Napa, not to make wine, but to have a place to land his helicopter when he wanted a grape. He acquired a rare collection of Faber god eggs because they looked shiny. He funded an expedition to find a mythical lost city, stipulating that if found, the primary temple be converted into a members-only nightclub. His life was utterly surreal. One day he'd be in a hard hat at the Apex construction site, discussing load-bearing walls and wind shear. The next he'd be at a state dinner in some tiny European principality, charming a princess while simultaneously closing a deal to buy a controlling share in her country's national airline, just so he could repaint the planes in his signature color, a very specific shade of electric blue. The pressure was immense. Sometimes, late at night, alone in one of his many opulent residences, a flicker of his old self, the guy who worried about rent and ate sad desk salads, would surface. He'd feel a twinge of something. Was it loneliness? Or just the sheer absurdity of it all? But then the system would nudge him. A gentle reminder, don't stop. Keep going. The view from the Apex will be worth it. And he had to admit, the thought of standing on top of his own skyscraper, a monument to a life he could never have imagined, was a powerful motivator. Plus, the rewards were just too good to pass up. He even started to enjoy the game with Maxwell Stern. Stern would announce a new wing for a hospital. Brandon would fund 3 hospitals and equip them with solid gold bedpans. He was joking about the bedpans, mostly, but the system liked the thought. Stern endowed a university chair. Brandon bought the university and renamed the School of Business after his cat, Mr. Fluffington, who now had his own diamond-encrusted collar, and a personal chef specializing in gourmet tuna. The media lapped it up. The king and the curmudgeon, they called them. Ratings for financial news networks soared whenever they were both scheduled to appear, even on different shows. As the Apex neared completion, a marvel of gleaming audacity, piercing the Manhattan sky, Brandon received an unexpected invitation. A handwritten note, on heavy, expensive-looking cardstock. Mr. King, it read. Enough. Let's talk. My office. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Maxwell Stern wanted to meet. Brandon felt a thrill. The system for once was silent, as if holding its breath. This wasn't about buying something or throwing a party. This was different. Chloe, Brandon said into his phone, clear my schedule for tomorrow morning, and find out what kind of coffee Maxwell Stern drinks. I want to send him a pound of something that costs more than his car. Chloe paused. Mr. Stern drives a 1998 Volvo, sir. For ironic understated wealth reasons, I believe. Brandon grinned. Perfect. Find me coffee beans that have been personally blessed by a Tibetan monk and retail for at least $5,000 a pound. Overnight them. The system gave a faint, approving chuckle in his mind. This is going to be fun. The next morning, Brandon strode into Maxwell Stern's surprisingly modest, by billionaire standards office. Stern, a man who looked perpetually vexed, was seated behind a large, uncluttered mahogany desk. The only ostentation was a breathtaking view of Central Park, almost but not quite as good as the one from Brandon's own penthouse. Mr. King, Stern said, not rising. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, raked over Brandon's impeccably tailored $30,000 suit. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Stern," Brandon replied, taking the offered seat. "The pleasure is all mine. Did you enjoy the coffee? Kopi Luwak, civet processed. Very exclusive." He'd decided against the monk blessed beans at the last minute too on the nose. The civet coffee was a subtler, more disgusting kind of flex. Stern's lips thinned. "It's an acquired taste, much like your public persona, I imagine." "Some people have excellent taste," Brandon said smoothly. The system gave a little pulse of approval. "Let's cut to the chase, King," Stern said, leaning forward. "This arms race of extravagance. It's absurd. It's wasteful. It's making a mockery of genuine achievement." "Is it?" Brandon raised an eyebrow. "I seem to be achieving quite a bit. The apex is nearly complete. My F1 team is actually winning races. My philanthropic endeavors, while perhaps flashier than yours, are undeniably impactful. What's not to like? It's the flash I object to." Stern snapped. "Wealth should be responsible. It should be discreet. You treat it like a game." "It is a game," Brandon said, a genuine smile playing on his lips. "A very fun, very rewarding game, and frankly, Mr. Stern, you make an excellent rival. You keep raising the stakes. It's stimulating." Stern looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. "Stimulating? I am trying to build a legacy of substance, of positive change." "You are building—" "Ah, but my monument will have a better view," Brandon countered. "And a zero-gravity spa. People will talk about the apex for centuries. Will they say the same about the Maxwell Stern Wing for sensible accounting practices?" A low growl emanated from Stern. You are infuriating." "I try," Brandon said. He leaned back, feeling the familiar hum of the system, warm and encouraging. It clearly enjoyed him verbally sparring with Stern as much as it enjoyed him buying a new hypercar. "What's your endgame, King?" Stern asked, his voice quieter now, more curious than angry. "You can't keep this up forever. Eventually the money runs out, or the public gets bored, or you just collapse under the weight of all that stuff." Brandon thought for a moment. The system was silent, letting him answer. "Endgame. I haven't really thought about it. The system, I mean my current trajectory, seems to be self-sustaining. The more I live lavishly, the more resources I seem to acquire. As for collapsing, I have an excellent team of personal trainers, nutritionists, and therapists on retainer. All part of the lifestyle." Stern stared at him. "You really believe this, don't you? That this endless cycle of consumption is sustainable?" "It has been so far," Brandon shrugged. "And honestly, it's a hell of a ride. Maybe you should try it. Loosen up a bit. Buy a solid gold hat. You might like it." Stern actually let out a short bark-like laugh. "A solid gold hat. You are certifiable." "Probably," Brandon admitted cheerfully. "But I am a very rich, very happy certifiable person." "And you, Mr. Stern, seem a little stressed." He stood up. "Well, this has been enlightening. Always good to get feedback from the competition. If you'll excuse me, I have a fitting for a suit woven from moon rocks. Allegedly. Probably just sparkly granite, but the price tag is astronomical, and that's what counts, right?" He turned to leave. "King," Stern called out. Brandon paused at the door. "One day," Stern said, his voice low and intense, "this house of cards you've built will come crashing down, and I, for one, will take no pleasure in it, because it will make us all look like fools." Brandon met his gaze. "Don't hold your breath, Stern. My house is built of titanium and self-replenishing bank accounts, and it has a fantastic security system." He walked out, a grin on his face. The system was practically singing. The confrontation had been a massive success. Apparently, dominating a rival with witty banter and superior lifestyle choices was a major point scorer. His phone buzzed. A new app had appeared on its home screen, one he hadn't installed. It was called Global Influence. Tapping it revealed a complex series of charts and metrics, showing his lavish index, cultural impact score, and rivalry dominance quotient, currently very high in the Stern category. It seemed the system was evolving, giving him more tools to manage his. The completion of the Apex was the global event of the year. World leaders, Hollywood royalty, tech titans, and influencers from every corner of the globe attended the grand opening gala. Brandon, resplendent in a suit that subtly shimmered with actual diamond dust in the fabric, a gift from Isabella, who'd found a way to synthesize it in a lab, an intellectual flex that the system adored, stood on the observation deck of his penthouse, the city lights spread out like a carpet of jewels below. Isabella was by his side, beautiful and brilliant, her eyes sparkling almost as much as his suit. "You actually did it," she said, shaking her head in amused disbelief. "You built a monument to, well, to you." "To us," Brandon corrected, taking her hand. "And to the idea that if you are going to dream, dream big. Ridiculously, impossibly big." The system flooded his senses with a feeling of profound accomplishment. It wasn't just approval, it was as if this monumental act of flexing had fulfilled a major objective. System milestone achieved. The zenith of extravagance. New paradigm unlocked. Legacy cultivation. Legacy cultivation? That sounded long-term. Fireworks exploded over the Hudson, specially designed to spell out Apex in letters a mile high. The party below was legendary. Even Maxwell Stern had sent a grudgingly polite note of congratulations, along with a very small, very tasteful bonsai tree. Brandon suspected it was bugged. He put it next to Mr. Fluffington's diamond-studded scratching post. Later that night, after the last guest had departed in their private helicopter or gold-plated limo, Brandon and Isabella stood alone on the vast terrace of their penthouse. The city was quiet now, a million sleeping stories below. So, Isabella said, leaning against him. What's next, Mr. King? Another skyscraper? By the moon? Brandon chuckled. The moon has terrible service, and the system is hinting at legacy, which I think means I have to make sure people are still talking about how awesome I am 1,000 years from now. So, more of the same, just bigger. Maybe, Brandon mused, or maybe different. The system seems to be less about just spending now and more about shaping things, culture, technology, maybe even history. He looked out at the endless city. It's still about living lavishly, of course. That's the fuel. But the goals are getting grander. He felt a familiar, pleasant tingle. The system was pleased with this line of thinking. Legacy is the ultimate luxury. It seemed to whisper in the depths of his mind. And yours is just beginning. Brandon King, the accidental billionaire, the master of mandated extravagance, smiled. His gilded cage had just expanded to encompass the entire world, and possibly beyond. It was a daunting, terrifying, and utterly exhilarating prospect. He pulled Isabella closer. Well, he said, I guess we'd better get started. Tomorrow I am thinking of buying a small country and turning it into the world's first 5-star, all-inclusive utopia. What do you think? Isabella laughed, the sound echoing in the clear night air. I think you are completely insane, and I think I need to design the national flag, with more stars, obviously. The system hummed, a deep, resonant chord of pure, unadulterated, forward-looking satisfaction. The game was far from over. It had just reached a whole new level, and Brandon, armed with unlimited resources and a mandate to live larger than life, was ready to play. His new global influence app pinged. A new potential legacy project was highlighted. Establish first permanent luxury habitat on Mars. Estimated cost astronomical. Potential system reward, galactic mogul status. Brandon grinned. Okay, Isabella, change of plans. How do you feel about Martian real estate? The life of Brandon King, powered by the lifestyle system, was never, ever going to be boring. And as long as he kept flexing, kept pushing the boundaries of extravagance, it would also be incredibly absurdly, wonderfully profitable. He just had to remember the golden rule. Never, ever stop flexing, because the fall from this height would be a long one indeed. But looking out from the top of the apex with the world at his feet and the universe as his next shopping mall, falling was the last thing on his mind. The only way was up. And out, lavishly of course.